Welcome back to Forever Wild Stories, where reality twists, shadows whisper secrets, and the truth is often darker than fiction. Tonight, we begin a chilling new series that will leave your spine tingling and your mind questioning everything you think you know about urban legends. You may have heard tales of haunted forests, cursed dolls, or spectral hitchhikers. But what if I told you there's a city nestled deep in the highlands of Peru? A city shrouded in secrecy, soaked in blood, and built on whispers of the unimaginable? City Peru is not marked on ordinary maps. It's a place locals fear, where time feels broken, and the air carries the scent of dread. Here, the legends aren't just stories, they're warnings. Over the course of 8 blood-chilling generations, we will dive deeper and deeper into the darkness of City Peru. Each chapter, 1,000 words of pure suspense, will drag you further into the maze of horror. But beware, nothing is as it seems. No one leaves untouched, and some doors should never be opened. So before we start, tell me, do you believe that some places were never meant to be found? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you dare to spend a night in City Peru? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with fellow horror lovers, because what's coming next is not for the faint of heart. This is Forever Wild Stories, and you're not ready for what's hiding in the shadows. The first time Mateo heard of City Peru, he was 12 years old, hiding beneath his abuela's kitchen table while a thunderstorm rattled the tin roof above. Her voice trembled as she whispered to his older cousin about the Ciudad Maldita, the cursed city, the place that devoured its visitors and never returned them whole. His abuela never told Mateo directly, but those words carved their place into his memory like ancient etchings on stone. 15 years later, Mateo stood at the edge of the Andean foothills, staring at the entrance of a forgotten trail, overgrown, unmarked, and suffocating with silence. Around him, the air was thin but heavy with moisture, and every tree seemed to lean inward, as if listening. He had returned to Peru after receiving an anonymous message containing just 5 words in a blurry photo. "Your brother is in City Peru." The photo showed a man, scruffy, terrified, his brother Elias, presumed dead for nearly 4 years, peeking out from behind a crumbling colonial wall, his eyes begging for help. Mateo's backpack was packed with survival gear, a loaded revolver, a hand-carved talisman from his abuela, and a journal. The journal once belonged to Elias, recovered by a hiker deep in the Cordillera Blanca, filled with frantic, fragmented entries about something called the Bellman and a map with no landmarks. The last page read, "They ring the bells at dusk. Don't look at them. Ever." As Mateo stepped onto the path, the foliage swallowed him whole. The deeper he trekked, the more unnatural things became. Birds flew in circles, insects moved in synchronized patterns. Even the wind seemed to speak in a strange cadence, almost like breathing. It felt wrong, like he was being watched by the forest itself. After several hours, the sunlight dimmed, though it was only midday. Fog poured from the underbrush in thick waves. That's when he saw the first one, a statue, or so he thought. It stood in the middle of the trail, a man, mouth agape, eyes wide in terror, frozen mid-scream. He reached out to touch it. The surface was warm. "Piedra viva," he muttered, "living stone." It was no statue. A deafening crack echoed through the forest like a whip, and something enormous stirred in the distance. Trees swayed, then snapped. Mateo ducked behind a fallen log, clutching his gun. Heavy footsteps approached, slow, deliberate, shaking the earth. Then a sound, low and grating, the toll of a bell. Gong. Gong. It grew louder, closer. Peeking out, Mateo caught a glimpse of a towering figure draped in rags, its face obscured by a bell-shaped mask of rusted bronze. 4 arms hung limply at its sides. Where it walked, the ground blackened. The bellman. Mateo bit his tongue to stay silent as the creature passed, dragging a hook staff carved with symbols that pulsed red like living veins. Once it vanished into the fog, the forest returned to its eerie stillness. But the air felt wrong, colder, heavier, haunted. He pushed on, shaken but determined. Hours later, the forest broke into a valley of ancient stone, and there it was, City Peru. Nestled between jagged cliffs, the city looked impossibly untouched by time. Spanish colonial buildings stood alongside Incan stone structures, covered in ivy and strange carvings. No power lines, no vehicles, just silence. Too silent. Not even wind. Mateo stepped into the city and immediately felt it. A pressure behind his eyes, a buzzing in his bones. The buildings whispered. He walked past a crumbling school, its windows shattered inward, chalkboards still filled with lessons. Children's shoes lay scattered across the ground, some still stained with dried blood. He entered a marketplace. Rusted carts, upturned stalls, rotten fruit petrified in baskets, and graffiti everywhere. Symbols like distorted eyes and twisted mouths. Messages like, "Don't drink the rain," and "The sky is watching." Then he saw her. A young girl stood at the corner of a ruined chapel, pale, dressed in a tattered white dress. No shoes. Her eyes were entirely black, void of light. "You came too late, Mateo," she said without moving her lips. "They already took him." He stumbled back, raising his gun. "Who are you?" he shouted. She tilted her head. "You'll hear the bells too soon. When you do, run north. The hollow street leads to the screamers, not the feeders." Then she vanished. No puff of smoke, no sound. Just gone. Mateo sprinted away, turning left and right down alleys that looked identical, his breath loud, panic rising. He passed a man slumped against a wall, his body twitching. As Mateo approached, he realized the man's skin had been stitched with words. Each cut a message. "I begged them not to open the gate." Suddenly the bells rang again. Gong! 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 This time, more than one. He turned and saw them. 3 bellmen, each with different masks, one blackened by ash, one covered in stitched human eyes, and one made entirely of bone. Behind them, dozens of faceless figures followed, whispering, shuffling, twitching like broken puppets. Mateo ran. He darted through corridors, over rooftops, under collapsed beams. The city twisted, streets changed, signs bled. Time seemed wrong. The sun hadn't moved since he arrived, yet shadows grew longer. He could hear them behind him, clanging, murmuring, chanting his name. Mateo. He found a narrow door and kicked it open. Inside, the air was warmer, thick with incense. Candles lit themselves as he entered. On the wall was a mural, huge, terrifying. It showed the bellman surrounding a golden door, and beyond it, a creature, indescribable, emerging from the earth. At the base of the mural, Elias, alive, holding the door shut. Mateo stumbled back. The candles flickered. From the shadows, a voice whispered, "You were never meant to find him." The whisper twisted around Mateo's spine like a serpent of ice. It didn't echo, didn't even sound like it was spoken aloud. It pressed directly into his mind. The mural loomed above him, Elias painted in oils and shadows, hands splayed desperately against the door of gold. Something monstrous behind it, something with far too many limbs. Mateo shook his head violently, trying to dislodge the voice, but it lingered. It wasn't done speaking. "You brought it with you." "What?" he gasped, stepping backward into a puddle of melted wax. The candles flared higher, now glowing green, casting monstrous shadows on the cracked walls. "The moment you set foot in the valley, the seal weakened. You're the key." He raised the revolver toward the voice, but found only empty space. The room grew colder, then hot, sickeningly hot, suffocating him. The air shimmered, and suddenly the door slammed shut behind him with a metallic thud that echoed forever. Trapped. "Think, Mateo, think," he muttered. The mural had to be a clue, a passage, a warning. He ran his fingers along the edges, pressing the painted eyes of the bellman, the symbols at their feet. One tile felt loose. He pushed, and the wall shifted with a grinding shriek, revealing a hidden stairwell spiraling downward into blackness. He hesitated for only a second before plunging in, flashlight out, revolver in the other hand. The steps descended for what felt like hours, though his watch had stopped ticking the moment he entered the city. The deeper he went, the more time bent. His thoughts felt fragmented, looping, layered like voices in static. He could swear he heard Elias' voice among them, crying, pleading, then laughing. At the bottom, the stairwell opened into a narrow corridor carved from stone and bone. The walls writhed, breathing. Faces seemed to form in the rock. Silent screams froze in mid-howl. Candles floated in mid-air, lighting the corridor ahead in pulses. He walked cautiously. Eventually, he found a chamber. Its walls were lined with mirrors, each one cracked differently. In the center sat a man on a throne of teeth. Mateo froze. The man was alive, breathing. His skin had turned grayish and stretched too tight across his bones. Long, knotted hair covered most of his face, and his eyes had been sewn shut with black wire. Still, he turned his head as if he could see. "You wear his face," the man rasped. "Who are you?" Mateo demanded. "Where's my brother?" The man chuckled, a sound that curdled the air. "Elias, yes, he tried to steal from them, took what wasn't his. Now he holds the door. But the door, it's hungry. I came to save him." "No one saves anyone here," the man said. "They only buy time." He reached beneath the throne and withdrew a twisted mask made of obsidian and metal. "Wear this, and you'll see the truth." Mateo didn't want to, but something deep within him, something primal, told him he had to. He took the mask, heavy and cold, and pressed it to his face. The world changed, colors inverted, shadows shrieked, the chamber vanished. Suddenly, Mateo stood on a street bathed in red moonlight. Buildings towered crookedly, melting upward into the sky like smoke. Screams echoed through the air, but no mouths moved. The bellmen were everywhere. They stood on rooftops, in windows, inside walls. Dozens, maybe hundreds, watching him. One stepped forward. Its mask wasn't made of metal but flesh, stitched from dozens of screaming faces. It held something in its hand, Elias's journal. It dropped it on the ground and pointed. Mateo lunged for it, ripping the pages open. New entries had been added, ones Elias hadn't written. "Don't let them feed. Don't speak the city's name aloud. Don't follow the sound of crying. And most of all, don't trust her." Beneath the entry was a symbol, the same one tattooed on the stitched man's arm from earlier, the twisted spiral with 3 eyes. Then he heard it. Crying. A woman's sobs echoing through the alley. Mateo froze. He remembered the journal's warning. Don't follow the sound of crying. But it sounded just like his mother, calling his name in Spanish, her voice desperate, broken. "Mateo, mi hijo, ayúdame." His heart thudded in his ears. He had to know, had to see. He followed. The alley twisted the deeper he walked. Walls grew taller. Hands reached from the bricks, grasping. The crying grew louder, now mixed with a wet gurgling. Mateo turned the corner and stopped cold. The woman had no face. Her body was identical to his mother's, even wearing the same rose-colored dress she'd been buried in. But her face was smooth skin. No eyes, no mouth, just a blank canvas. From her back sprouted spidery limbs, clicking against the stone. When she turned her head toward him, dozens of mouths opened across her chest and neck, all screaming in unison. Mateo fired. Once, twice, 3 times. The creature shrieked and lunged, but his final bullet hit its temple. It convulsed violently, screeching before collapsing into a puddle of black ooze. He stumbled backward, breath ragged, ears ringing. "You shouldn't have done that," said a voice behind him. He spun around. It was the girl again, the one with black eyes. This time her skin was cracked like porcelain, glowing faintly from within. "You fed the city," she said. "What the hell is this place?" Mateo shouted. She approached slowly. "City Peru is a vault. It holds the thing beneath the door. The bellmen are its jailers. The rest of us are offerings." Mateo's hands trembled. "Then why was Elias here? Why am I here?" She looked at him, her voice hollow. "Because you have the key." Before Mateo could speak, the ground split beneath him. A gaping maw of earth opened wide, and he plummeted into darkness. Mateo's body slammed against something wet and unyielding as the world spun violently around him. Darkness swallowed his screams. It wasn't just falling, it was descending, like being swallowed by a living throat. The walls of the chasm pulsed as if lined with muscle. Cold, slimy tendrils brushed against his limbs. He fought to grab onto anything, but nothing was solid. Only flesh and shadow. Then suddenly, he landed. Hard. The impact rattled every bone, but he was alive. He groaned, blinking through the blackness. A faint red glow flickered in the distance, the only source of light in the impossible depth he'd fallen into. His flashlight. Gone. Gun. Gone. The mask shattered beside him like obsidian glass. He sat up, head pounding. The ground squelched beneath him. Not dirt, not rock. Meat. It pulsed. "Where the hell am I?" he whispered, voice cracking. From the darkness, whispers rose. "You're beneath the city. Where the first promise was broken. Where it waits." Mateo's breath hitched. The air was thick with rotten sulfur. The stench clung to his throat like tar. Shapes moved at the edge of vision, slithering, crawling, twitching. He staggered to his feet and walked toward the crimson light, every step squishing into the flesh-like ground. The corridor opened into a cavernous hall that defied explanation. Thousands of bodies, not corpses, but living, twitching things, were embedded into the walls, eyes sewn open, mouths stretched into eternal screams. They murmured constantly, their voices overlapping like static. He could almost understand them. A woman clawed at the fleshy wall near him. Her body was fused to it, ribs visible, hair falling out in clumps. She stared at him with blood-red eyes. "Don't let it sing," she rasped. "The song wakes it. You must not let it sing." "Let what sing?" he asked. But she only screamed in reply, a sharp, soul-ripping scream that triggered an echo of pain through the chamber. Then from somewhere deep within the earth, the bell tolled again. Gong. Gong. The screaming stopped, all voices silenced, and then it sang. The sound that followed was not music. It was a combination of bone-scraping metal, flesh-tearing, and children wailing. It crept into Mateo's skull, drilling into his memories. He saw flashes of his mother's deathbed, of Elias holding his hand in the rain as a child, of himself carving the talisman his abuela gave him. Except in this vision, it bled. The cavern shook violently. Veins along the walls pulsed and burst. Black ichor sprayed in all directions. From the center of the room, a massive egg, pulsing, veined, stitched with hundreds of mouths, split down the center, and from it emerged. The creature was formless at first, shifting, reforming, a mass of limbs and faces, some sobbing, some laughing, some whispering things in dead languages. Its eyes blinked across its body, uncoordinated, and its skin reflected memories. Mateo saw himself reflected in the thing, but not as he was, as he could have been, or should have been. It moved without touching the ground, gliding over the air. Each breath it took caused the embedded bodies to convulse. It turned toward Mateo and smiled. "My jailer comes to feed me." Its voice was every voice Mateo had ever heard. His mother, his brother, his teachers, the girl with black eyes, even his own. "No, I'm not here to feed anything," Mateo yelled. "But you opened the path. You wore the mask. You brought the blood." "I came for Elias," he shouted. "Tell me where he is." The creature extended a limb, a fusion of ribs and tendons, and touched the ground. From that contact, a new passage bloomed in the flesh wall like a wound opening. "Then go. Find what remains of him. But remember," it leaned closer, and 100 mouths whispered at once. "If you hear him scream, do not follow. It's not him anymore." Mateo, trembling, stepped into the passage. The wall closed behind him. The scream of the egg thing still echoed in his skull, but the path forward pulsed with cold light. He followed it. The tunnel grew tighter, more organic. It beat like a heart, and every so often, Mateo had to squeeze through or crawl beneath dangling tendons. He found another chamber ahead, a makeshift cell carved into the flesh, surrounded by bones shaped like bars. Inside, Elias, his body hunched over, hair long, skin pale as milk. He was sketching symbols in the meat floor with a broken tooth. Mateo rushed forward. Elias! His brother looked up, his eyes glassy, blood dripping from his nose. Mateo, you shouldn't have come. It's in you now. What? What the hell are you talking about? I came to get you out of here. Elias smiled, a bitter, broken expression. You don't get out. You get taken in. We're part of it now. All of us. We always were. Mateo reached through the bone bars. Number that thing back there. It let me come. I can get you out. Elias shook his head. You don't understand. The bellmen, they're not guards. They're servants. The city was built to grow it. Every person who vanishes, every blood drop spilled here, it feeds the seed beneath. What seed? Mateo whispered. Elias leaned forward, eyes wide. The first god, the old one, the one they buried and forgot. City Peru was built to keep it sleeping, but they grew greedy. They wanted power. They fed it anyway. Mateo felt the world tilt. His head spun. And now, it wants out. Suddenly, the bone bars retracted into the walls like liquid. Elias slumped forward. If you came to save me, it's already too late. But maybe we can kill it. You still have the talisman? Mateo nodded, pulling the bloodstained charm from his pocket. Elias' eyes flickered with the faintest hope. Then you'll have to go deeper, to the sanctum, the source. That's where it dreams, where it's still weak. Then show me the way. But Elias didn't move, because behind Mateo the bells tolled again. Gong, gong, gong. And this time, they were right outside the chamber. Gong, gong, gong. Each ring of the bell struck Mateo like a hammer to the chest. The air twisted and warped with a deep metallic groan. Shadows pooled in the doorway of the chamber, curling like smoke. Then one stepped through. A bellman. Its towering frame scraped the fleshy ceiling. Its mask wasn't carved from metal this time. It was made of skulls, layered and fused, mouths still open in eternal howls. Long, bony arms dragged chains behind it, each link engraved with ancient symbols that shimmered with ghostly light. Elias stumbled backward, panic flooding his eyes. We have to go. Now. Mateo didn't argue. He grabbed his brother, and they ran. The corridor that led to the sanctum twisted in on itself. The ground sloped downward, and the walls began to bleed. Thick rivulets of dark fluid dripping from pulsating veins above them. The light grew dim, the temperature rising until their skin glistened with sweat. Behind them, the bellman's chains rattled like death knocking on a door. Keep going, Elias wheezed. They turned into a narrow artery-like tunnel, barely able to move side by side. The thudding footsteps of the bellman echoed louder, faster. The thing wasn't walking anymore. It was chasing. Mateo spotted a fissure in the side of the tunnel. There, he yelled, shoving Elias into it. They squeezed through and found themselves in a chamber that had once been some kind of cathedral, its pews made from twisted ribs. The altar, an open maw spewing fog. Blood dripped from the ceiling like rain, pooling around a desecrated statue in the center. And behind the statue stood another figure. This one wore no mask. It was a woman, tall, cloaked in crimson threads, her face covered with a veil made of hundreds of tiny, sewn-shut eyes. You bring it closer with every step, she said, her voice reverberating through their bones. Mateo aimed his flashlight at her. Who are you? I am the last warden, she replied. The last of the bloodbinders. I kept it dreaming, until you came. She lifted a trembling hand toward Elias. He broke the chain. He opened the wound. Elias stepped forward, shaking his head. I didn't mean to. I thought I could steal its secrets. You thought wrong, she whispered. Suddenly, the wall behind them exploded inward, the bellman smashing through with an unholy shriek. The warden didn't flinch. She raised her arms and the ground responded. Tendrils of bone erupted upward and wrapped around the bellman, holding it in place. You have one chance now, she said, breathless. The sanctum lies beneath the eye pit. There you'll find the seed, and you'll see the truth. But what do we do with it? Mateo asked. She hesitated. Bury it again, or burn with it. With a sudden gesture, the warden tore open the floor. A spiraling tunnel dropped into an abyss below. Go, she cried. Elias jumped first. Mateo followed. The bellman's scream chasing them as they plummeted into a tunnel lined with twitching skin and whispering mouths. It felt endless, like falling through the screams of the damned. Then they landed with a splash, knee-deep in blood. They were in the eye pit. Above them, hundreds of eye-shaped holes watched from the walls, each blinking in slow, unnatural rhythms. The walls hummed with psychic energy. In the center of the chamber stood a massive obelisk, the seed. Its surface was covered in moving sigils, shifting constantly like it was alive. And beside it, a throne, carved from remains, and on it sat a copy of Mateo. The doppelganger smiled. "I've been waiting," Elias gasped. "Mateo, don't listen to it. That's not you." "I know," Mateo said coldly, raising the talisman. It burned in his hand, reacting to the presence of the seed. He stepped toward the obelisk, but the copy moved too. "You think you're the first?" it whispered. "The first to try to stop this? You're not. You're just the latest in a long line of fools who thought this thing could die." "Then why are you here?" Mateo snarled. The copy grinned wider. "Because I am you, the version that gave in, that fed it willingly, that understood its power." The seed pulsed in reaction. The eyes on the walls began to weep blood. Elias fumbled through his coat and pulled something out. Pages torn from the ancient journal. "There's a ritual," he said, "to bind it again, but it needs blood. Our blood." "Of course it does," Mateo muttered. "You'll have to cut your palm, press it to the seed, speak the binding words. I'll do the same on the other side." "And if we're wrong?" Elias looked him dead in the eyes. "Then it devours everything." Mateo raised the talisman, slicing it across his hand. Blood dripped down his fingers. The seed reacted instantly. Its surface cracked, revealing a glowing red heart. Screams erupted from within, thousands of voices, men, women, children, wailing in agony. The copy of Mateo snarled, his flesh bubbling and twisting. "You don't know what you're doing," it howled. Elias cut his hand too and placed it on the other side. Together they began to chant from the journal. "Lo que duerme bajo tierra, que no despierte jamás. Ligado por sangre, sellado por la sangre, hasta el fin." The seed thrashed. The chamber shook violently. The walls split, vomiting shadowy hands that clawed at them. The seed screamed in pain or rage, maybe both. The fake Mateo lunged, but Mateo was faster. He rammed the talisman into the seed's core. A brilliant white light exploded outward, engulfing everything. The screams intensified, then stopped. Silence. Total, suffocating silence. The seed turned to stone. Elias collapsed unconscious. Mateo stood, barely breathing, staring at what they'd just done. But something moved behind him. The seed's surface cracked again. And this time it wasn't a voice that came out. It was a whisper. "You only fed me more." Mateo stumbled backward, heart thundering in his chest. The seed, now gray and stone-like, should have been inert, dead. Instead, hairline fractures webbed across its surface, each crack glowing with a sickly, greenish-yellow light. And from within came that whisper again, soft, crawling, eager. "You only fed me more." He turned to Elias, lying unconscious on the blood-slick ground. His brother's face was pale, lips stained red, blood still oozing from the ritual slice on his palm. Mateo bent down, shook him. "Elias, wake up! Come on! Don't do this! Not now!" But Elias didn't stir. Behind him, the seed began to pulse. Once, twice. The light within it dimmed and flared again, like a dying star trying to reignite. Suddenly, a deafening shriek tore through the chamber, high-pitched, piercing, inhuman. The stone shattered. A wave of heat and rot blasted through the eye pit, hurling Mateo against the chamber wall. He coughed, blood trickling from his mouth, his vision blurred. And then it emerged, not a creature, not fully, more like a formless mass of writhing tendrils, stitched skin, and bone spirals, floating inches above the ground. Eyes blinked open across its form, hundreds of them, all glowing with hungry, malevolent intelligence. It smelled of grave dust and centuries-old decay. It pulsed with ancient power, radiating pure, suffocating malice. You failed them all, it whispered. You brought them here. The brother, the warden, the watchers. You opened the door they spent centuries keeping closed. Mateo struggled to his knees. No, we sealed you. The ritual. The entity laughed, a wet, gurgling sound like lungs filled with sewage. That was not a seal. It was a spark. The blood was ripe. The time was right. Suddenly from the ground, hands erupted, skeletal, twitching, eyes embedded in their palms. They clawed at the walls and floor, forming a circle around the creature. And the walls began to bleed harder. The eye pit was awakening. From the stone above, massive slabs slid open, revealing hidden corridors filled with more of the stitched bodies, now writhing, twitching, waking. Their mouths opened in sync and they sang. That song again, the one made of screams, flesh, fire, and sorrow. Mateo felt it pulling at his mind, trying to unravel his thoughts. He clenched his teeth, grabbed the talisman, and screamed back. No, I'm not letting you out. He looked at Elias. I need you, hermano. I can't do this without you. Please. As if in answer, Elias twitched. His eyes snapped open, pure black. No, Mateo whispered. No, no, no. Elias stood, smiling, his mouth far too wide. You really thought it wouldn't take me too? He asked, voice layered with something else, something older. Mateo stepped back. The entity floated closer, the eyes across its body focusing on Elias now. It spoke directly to him. Welcome home, prophet. And Elias bowed. Mateo's stomach twisted. You're not my brother. Elias tilted his head. I was, but he's gone now. All he wanted was knowledge, and now he is knowledge. He lifted his hand. The talisman in Mateo's grip burned red hot, and Mateo dropped it with a hiss. The air cracked. A tear opened above the seed's husk, a gaping void that spun with stars and screaming faces, howling in languages not meant for ears. The chamber began to warp, gravity pulling toward the rift. The very architecture of the eye pit twisted, melting into spirals of meat and bone. I won't let you take the city, Mateo snarled, grabbing the talisman again despite the pain. I'll stop you, I swear it. You can try, the entity said, drifting closer. But everything you've done has only brought us closer to the surface. From the corridor above, the warden fell, her robes in tatters, body bleeding from dozens of cuts. She landed hard, looked up at Mateo with wild eyes. It's too late to stop it now, she rasped, crawling to him. But there's another way. You can send it back. How? She pressed a knife made of obsidian and bone into his hand. Cut the host. Cut the prophet. The bond will break. It'll be trapped again. Mateo looked at Elias, his brother, possessed, grinning with blackened teeth. No, he said, shaking. He's still in there. I can feel it. There is no him anymore, the warden snapped. Only it. But Elias stepped forward then, voice quiet, face twitching. Mateo. It was his voice, real, pure. Please, do it. Mateo's breath caught. No. Do it before I disappear again, Elias whispered, before it uses me to walk above ground. Mateo's hand trembled. The knife pulsed in his grip. The chamber shook again. Above them, the city's foundation cracked. Flesh peeled away to reveal rusted rebar and broken sewer lines. The sky above flickered, showing glimpses of streets, buildings, and unaware civilians. The entity's true goal, the surface. Mateo raised the blade. Elias looked up at him, smiling through tears. I'm glad you came back for me. Hermano. And then, the mask of the prophet returned, eyes glowing, mouth splitting open like a flower of fangs. Mateo screamed and drove the knife into his brother's chest. The entity wailed, a sound so shrill and violent it shattered the stone around them. The seed cracked in two. The rift collapsed, sucking the entity back in. Tendrils flailed, burning in white fire. The voices howled in fury. The bellman above shattered into dust. The eyes on the wall melted. Mateo clung to Elias, whose body convulsed once, twice, and then went still. The eye pit went silent. He cried, long, broken sobs as the light faded. He was alone now, Elias was gone, but the city was safe, or so he thought, because as he stood to leave, the talisman twitched. It had grown another eye. The new eye on the talisman blinked. Mateo dropped it instinctively, his breath catching in his throat. The charm clattered against the wet floor of the eye pit, spinning once before landing upright, its carved surface pulsing with a faint heartbeat. Something was still alive. The darkness didn't retreat after the ritual. It didn't fade. It lingered, watching, waiting, coiled in the shadows like a predator, tasting blood for the first time in centuries. Mateo wiped the blood off his shaking hands, crouched over Elias's body. His brother's expression was peaceful, but the echo of that ancient voice still rang in Mateo's skull. He stared at the seed's shattered remains. The split shell oozed black sap, and inside, embedded in its core, was something glinting, a metallic tooth, about 6 inches long, inscribed with symbols that moved. He reached for it. As soon as his fingers brushed the object, the wall shifted. No, melted. The stone morphed into faces, hundreds of them, crying out in torment. Some were ancient, eroded like old gravestones. Others were newer, fresher, recognizable. One of them was his mother. Another was Elias. "No!" Mateo gasped. "No, you're gone. I saw you go." Elias's face in the wall opened its eyes. "You only delayed the dark." Mateo turned to run, but the walls closed in. The eye pit collapsed inward, dragging him into a tunnel slick with gore and bile. He tumbled for what felt like forever, the sound of chained whispers chasing him as he fell. And then, silence. He landed on a cold stone floor. Everything had changed. He was no longer in the eye pit. He was in a catacomb, one far older than the city above. The walls were carved from bone and fossilized organs. The air was damp, thick with a sickly sweet rot. Faint chanting echoed from somewhere deeper within. He stood disoriented, clutching the tooth. The talisman pulsed again in his pocket, its eye closed now, but warm like a living thing. Mateo heard footsteps. He ducked behind a pillar of fused skeletons just as figures passed by. They were dressed in monk-like robes, but their heads were shaved and burned, revealing symbols branded into their scalps. Their eyes had been sewn shut. Still, they moved with unnatural precision, as if guided by something unseen. Each of them carried an offering, a small, squirming creature that bled from the mouth. They were heading toward a chamber lit by blue flame. Mateo followed silently. Inside the room was a temple, not to any god he'd ever heard of, but to something older, more hungry. A massive idol stood at the center, half man, half serpent, its face made entirely of gnashing teeth. Its name carved beneath, Sulcu'rah, the first eye. The chanting rose. One of the monks stepped forward and placed his offering on a blood-soaked altar. The creature screamed, a sound more human than animal, before it was devoured by flames that screamed back. Mateo's heart pounded. His grip on the tooth tightened. He stepped backward, but the stone beneath him groaned. The monks turned, their stitched faces tilted toward him, despite their lack of vision. And then they spoke in unison. "He carries the key." One monk pulled a dagger from his robes and lunged. Mateo dodged, barely, as the blade scraped across the bone wall. Another swung a censer that spewed black smoke, the scent of sulfur and old blood flooding Mateo's lungs. He ran, through halls of weeping statues, past shrines built from still-beating hearts, down staircases that wept blood with every step. They chased him. One caught up, grabbed his shoulder. Mateo turned, stabbing blindly with the tooth. The moment it touched the monk's skin, the body disintegrated, ripped apart by invisible forces, sucked into the air like ashes into a furnace. The others stopped cold. The key had power. Mateo didn't stop to question it. He ran until the walls changed again, this time opening into a massive chamber where roots of the city hung above like a decaying ceiling. The heart of the old city, and there in the middle, a pool of ink, so dark it seemed to drink the light. It whispered his name. Mateo. It wasn't the entity's voice, not Sulcu'rah. This one was familiar. It was Elias. "Don't listen," Mateo hissed to himself. "It's not him, it's not." But the voice persisted. "It's me, Hermano. I'm in here." It didn't consume me completely. You can reach me, but you have to dive. He stepped toward the pool, breath shaking. Number, this is a trap. Then why would I know your name? Why would I know the color of the sky the day Mama died? You were wearing red. You never wear red, but you did that day. Mateo froze. That memory, no one else knew it. He'd never told a soul. Elias? The pool rippled, and then a hand reached out, pale, shaking, familiar. He ran to it, grabbed it, but as he did, he saw the veins in the arm pulse black. The nails curled into claws. The skin rippled and split. Mateo screamed and let go. The hand writhed back into the pool. The voice changed. You still love him, it said mockingly. That will be your ruin. The chamber shook. The pool boiled. Mateo turned to run. But something rose from the ink. A form not unlike Elias, but taller, emaciated, its mouth torn open and stitched at the same time. Its arms were too long. Its eyes glowed with starlight, deep, unknowable, ancient. It stepped onto the stone, and the ink beneath turned to ash, and it smiled. You broke the first seal, it said in 1,000 voices. Now we break the rest, together. The walls behind Mateo collapsed, and through the dust and flame, he saw something horrifying. The city of Peru, visible through a breach in the cavern ceiling. It was already changing. The breach in the cavern ceiling widened with a sharp groan, and dust rained down like the sky was crumbling. Through it, Mateo saw buildings tilting unnaturally, their frames twisting like bones dislocated from joints. Streetlights flickered erratically above empty avenues, and power lines hissed as if the city's electrical grid was screaming in protest. But worse were the people. They were walking, no, staggering, moving like puppets beneath a cruel hand. Their heads twitched to the same rhythm, their mouths open in silent song. From this distance, Mateo couldn't hear it, but he could feel it. The hymn of Sulcu'rah had reached the surface. He stumbled backward from the sight, heart thundering in his chest. No, it's already started. The thing that had emerged from the pool, a twisted version of Elias, stood motionless, watching him. You should be proud, it rasped, voice layered with countless echoes. The chain has been broken. The seals are shattering, and it was your blood that opened the gate. Mateo clenched the tooth, still glowing in his hand. Then I'll close it, even if I have to die to do it. The creature's grin deepened, too wide, stretching its face into a torn mask. You'll die either way, but dying with hope? That's amusing. It lunged forward. Mateo dove to the side, narrowly avoiding claws that scraped the stone like knives on glass. He rolled and brought the tooth up defensively. The moment it passed through the creature's shadow, the ground hissed, bubbling like acid had been poured into the earth. You can't kill me, the creature hissed. You can't kill what's already been remembered. Mateo didn't stop to listen. He sprinted into a narrow passage, ducking low as ribs jutted from the ceiling like stalactites made of corpses. The creature followed, its movements fluid, unnatural, bones cracking with every step. The catacombs stretched before him like a living maze. The tunnels pulsed and shifted, flesh stitching and unstitching across the walls. Every turn led to another hallway of horrors, a room of moaning mirrors that reflected people Mateo didn't know but felt connected to. A stairwell of screaming mouths, a pit filled with rats that whispered prophecies in Elias's voice. It knows where you are. You brought the hunger. You're the last of the line. Eventually, he stumbled into a sealed chamber, untouched by corruption. Circular, domed, lit by a soft glow emanating from crystals embedded in the floor. At the center stood a statue of a woman carved in obsidian, holding a bowl that overflowed with a liquid like starlight. The moment Mateo entered, the door slammed shut behind him. The creature pounded from outside, screeching, "Open it!" But the statue spoke. I am Uriana, the last to bind the first eye. I died sealing Sulcu'rah beneath this city. Mateo fell to his knees. Please, I need to stop it. You can't, she said gently. Not alone. You need the others. What others? Everyone's dead. They were turned, possessed, eaten. Not all, Uriana whispered. There are still guardians, slumbering beneath the city, blood-bound protectors of Peru. If you find them, if you awaken them, you may still have a chance. Mateo looked at the bowl. "What is this?" She extended her stone hand. "Drink. It will show you where they sleep." He hesitated, then took a sip. His vision went white. Mateo found himself soaring over the city, as if pulled by strings of memory. He passed over rooftops warped into spirals, cars melted into fleshy blobs, and fountains that now spouted blood. But beneath it all, he saw 4 points of light, hidden deep in places forgotten to time. The Cathedral of the Hollow Bell, the library beneath San Aurelio, the blood caves of Cerro Amarillo, and the drowned courtyard beneath the river. There, the guardians slept. He awoke, coughing, sweat pouring down his face. The pounding had stopped. The creature was gone. For now. Mateo stepped forward and grabbed the bowl. It was cool, humming with old power. Somehow he knew it was important, a relic that could bind the guardians once found. He whispered, "Thank you." The statue remained silent. He turned to the stone door, now slightly ajar. Whatever power had protected the chamber was weakening. He didn't wait to see what would break through. Above ground, the city was now in full decay. Mateo emerged into the old industrial district, where chimneys had turned into spires of bone, and warehouses now housed throbbing cocoons suspended by strands of hair and skin. People crawled through the streets, their eyes sewn shut, humming the ancient hymn. Children laughed as they drew sigils in blood on the pavement. From the shadows, black-eyed priests emerged, cloaks flapping like dying birds. The city had become a cathedral of horror. Mateo kept to the alleys. He made his way to the first location, the Cathedral of the Hollow Bell, once a forgotten ruin at the edge of the old district. Now it loomed like a watchtower, its bell replaced by a hanging heart, pulsing with foul light. He approached the steps. The ground around them was littered with fingers, all pointing toward the entrance. As he stepped through, a whisper caressed his ear. "First of the bound, wake." Inside, everything was wrong. Pews had been replaced with rows of kneeling, headless figures. The altar was covered in veils made of flayed skin, and where the crucifix should have been, a tree made of bones rose into the ceiling. At the base of the tree, wrapped in vines and breathing faintly, lay a woman. Ancient, her body covered in glyphs, her eyes sealed with wax. The first guardian. Mateo approached. As he lifted the bowl, the glyphs on her skin lit up, matching the pulse of the liquid inside. He dipped the edge, and the moment a drop touched her lips, she awoke. Her eyes burned gold, and she screamed, not in pain, but in wrath. The cathedral trembled. The bone tree creaked. The headless worshippers turned to ash. The guardian rose, towering, her skin glowing with wards and sigils. "I dreamed of the fall," she said, voice shaking the walls. "I have seen the end." Mateo looked at her. "Can you stop it?" "No," she said, "but we can fight." She extended her hand to him. "Come, we must wake the others." As they stepped into the city once more, a new sound broke the air. A new verse in Sulcu'rah's hymn. This one was faster, and it was getting closer. The sky over City Peru had gone black, not from nightfall, but from something far worse. Swarms of winged specters, once people, circled like vultures. Their hollow screams echoed through alleyways, now lined with mounds of ash where buildings once stood. The heartbeat of Sulcu'rah pulsed through every crack in the city, turning concrete to flesh, glass to bone, and air to choking whispers. Mateo ran alongside the first guardian, whose golden glow lit the corrupted streets. Her presence drove back some of the lesser horrors, but others only paused, curious. They had never seen her kind awaken, not in centuries. "We need to move fast," she warned, her eyes blazing as they entered the tunnels beneath San Aurelio. "The second guardian sleeps below, but so does the choir of teeth." "What's that?" Mateo asked, dreading the answer. They were once monks who failed to resist Sulcu'rah's song. It tore out their humanity, replaced their tongues with knives and their throats with bells. As they descended the spiral staircase, hidden beneath the ruined library's floor, chimes began to ring. "Too late," the guardian whispered. "They know." A chorus of shrieks erupted from the walls as pale-robed figures began crawling from the stone like maggots. Their mouths hung open in eternal scream, and inside their throats, razor-blade tongues clinking like wind chimes soaked in blood. "Run!" Mateo shouted. The guardian raised her hand, chanting in a forgotten tongue. Sigils erupted from her palm and blasted the tunnel ahead, clearing a path. "The tomb is beneath the Hall of Silence. We're close." They reached a chamber filled with books, rotting, writhing, whispering. At the center lay a coffin, bound in chains made of words etched into steel. The choir swarmed from every corner, howling. Mateo dipped the starlight bowl once more, pouring its contents onto the chains. They melted, and the coffin burst open. A man sat up inside, covered in dust and wearing the robes of a long-dead scholar. His face was covered in script, living ink that squirmed over his skin. "Who calls me from sleep?" the man asked. "The end is here," said the first guardian. "We need you." The second guardian rose, and with a single word, the choir of teeth exploded into flame. Two guardians now stood beside Mateo. Two more to go. They traveled through blood-soaked canals toward Cerro Amarillo, where the third guardian was buried beneath the hill in the blood caves. But the moment they approached, the ground screamed. Tentacles of rotted muscle burst from the earth, slapping the second guardian across the chest and sending him flying. From the hole in the ground emerged a colossus, a servant of Sulcu'rah, forged from dead villagers, fused together into a massive humanoid with 12 arms, each ending in a weeping eye. "I've seen this thing in dreams," Mateo muttered, terrified. "We have no time for fear," the first guardian growled, summoning fire into her hands. She leapt forward, slashing at the creature's limbs. The second guardian recovered and began chanting, launching bolts of raw sound. Mateo slipped into the cave mouth during the chaos. Inside, a river of blood flowed from an altar of meat and teeth. At its center lay a man with skin like stone and a crown of thorn vines. The moment Mateo entered, the man's eyes opened, solid black, like the night before a storm. "Are you the bearer of the bowl?" Mateo nodded, holding it out. The guardian reached into the bowl and bit it. The light inside surged and spread through his veins. He stood immense and let out a roar that collapsed the cavern walls, reducing the colossus above to dust and silence. Three guardians. One remained, their final destination, the drowned courtyard, deep beneath the river. The path was nearly sealed by Sulcu'rah's twisting corruption, but the guardians cut through the city's bleeding entrails, forming a tunnel through living stone and vomiting pipes. At the courtyard's gates, they were met by the herald. It was Elias, no longer twisted, no longer monstrous, restored, beautiful, and smiling. "Mateo," he said softly, "you can stop. Just come with me. Let the city go." "Don't listen," growled the first guardian. Mateo's knees buckled. "You're not him." Elias stepped forward, tears in his eyes. "But I remember you. I remember everything. Our games, our secrets. I am him, Mateo. He's just part of me now." He opened his mouth, and the voice of Sulcu'rah spilled out, a sound like every scream that had ever echoed through Peru's valleys, layered atop one another in eternal agony. Mateo screamed in defiance and charged, the three guardians following behind. The final battle began. Elias's form shattered, revealing a mass of black flame and ash. Sulcu'rah's herald, fully reborn. The guardians battled its many forms, wolves made of ash, serpents made of mirrors, and soldiers wearing the faces of loved ones. Mateo reached the courtyard's heart, where the last guardian, a child, lay inside a cocoon of tears. "No," he whispered. "They left a child to hold this horror." The cocoon pulsed with sobs. He offered the bowl. The child's hand emerged, touching the rim. A blinding light erupted. The guardians turned, rallying to the light. And for the first time, Sulcu'rah screamed in fear. The battle raged. Guardians against God. Mateo watched as the first guardian was pierced through the chest but laughed in the face of pain. The second turned his own flesh to stone, crushing the enemy beneath his weight. The third shattered the walls with thunder. And then the child spoke. "I am the final seal." With one gesture, the world split. The city rippled and everything paused. The guardians turned to Mateo. "It is time." "Time for what?" he asked, breathless. "To choose." Sulcu'rah's essence was unraveling, but not gone. It lingered, begging, tempting. Take my power, it whispered. End all this. Rule them. Protect them. Your way. The guardian said nothing. The child only watched. Mateo stood there, one foot in light, one in shadow. And then, that's it for today's tale, Wild Ones. This has been the ending of Unsettling Urban Legends, the dark side of City Peru. What do you think Mateo chose? Light or shadow? Would you have done the same? Let's talk about it in the comments. Was this the ending you expected, or did something catch you by surprise? Drop your thoughts below. Like, share, and subscribe to Forever Wild Stories, where nightmares come to life, one whisper at a time. Until the next legend surfaces, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, some stories are better left forgotten.